Hi, welcome back to Making It with England. Today I have got on my desk a collage. This is my collage book. You've seen it before. It's a magazine, a fashion magazine that I have been using. And I got it out on Friday to work with my friend Michelle. And we had talked about what we were going to do, and we talked about the prompts that are in Makers of Mixed Media Art and Artists. You can find that group on Facebook, and it is a private group, so you do need to answer the questions should you wish to join it. But there are all kinds of things that happen there. If you're not in there, you're missing some things. So just know that it's there. Now, this month, the collage theme is breaking boundaries. And I'm going to read this and try not to get tongue tied. This is what the prompt said: breaking boundaries. Create a composition featuring barriers like fences, cages, or walls that are being shattered or torn down. Use contrasting elements like vibrant colors bursting through muted tones to symbolize breaking free from limitations. When I read that, I had to ponder and think about it. I kind of felt like I had my head on my chin and that statue of the thinker. That's how I felt. I thought about it and I thought, well, I was expecting it to be a list of prompts, and it wasn't. And so it was much deeper than what I expected it to be. And I thought, okay, I can do a collage. I've never had problems with collages. So what am I going to do? And the more I thought about it, the more it come to me something my dad said. This is my inspiration, and it comes from a statement my dad made during a short battle with cancer. I am so weak, I could not fight my way out of a wet paper bag. Now, my job is, when that inspiration came to me, is to figure out how to do it. So I have already, while I was on with Michelle, so if you want to see how this started and the conversation we had, um, just know that it's there, and I will put her link below. That was on Friday, and I will put the date that we did that. And she was doing her first collage ever. She's done masterboards, but not collages, so we're working through this together. All right, so I started thinking about the paper bag, and I remembered watching Janet Nash take a piece of fabric and lay it over a colorful piece of fabric, and she made all these wonky stitches with her sewing machine. And then she wet it and kind of opened some of those up. Now I can't put it down on my surface here and wet it. But what I can do is I can move this magazine aside. Yep, I got it. No worries, I have it, I have it. Let's see if we can put it somewhere without causing a crab avalanche. Yes, 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 you heard me. There could be a crab avalanche. No matter how hard I try, I constantly struggle with messes. Okay, so what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to just, okay, let me tell you how I'm thinking about this. This page represents the chaos. All these crazy mad stitches represents the chaos the first day that we knew something was not right. My phone rang around 8 o'clock in the morning, and my dad said, I need you to take me to the doctor. And I'm like, what? My dad didn't like to go to doctors, and he did not often ask for help. And I said, what's going on? He said, well, I went to the doctor yesterday, and he's talking under his breath. He said, I went to the doctor yesterday, and they did some blood work, and it came back really bad. There's something bad wrong. And I said, well, what is it? And he was hesitant to say. So I got dressed. I made arrangements to take my oldest child, who was only 2 at the time, to a friend's house. And I took my dad that day from doctor to doctor. And every doctor that we went to, things got worse. We ended up at the hospital, and within 12 hours, within about 3 hours, I knew he had tumors, massive tumors. We got to the hospital, and they did more tests, and they said, okay, well, we're going to do this at some wee hour of the morning. So my friend just said, well, let me just keep your daughter, which was so sweet and so kind. So the next morning, I was up at 4 o'clock, and I went to the hospital to be with my dad while they did his test. They were going to do some CT scans and a biopsy and see what they could figure out. And they had already gotten him and taken him down for one part of the scan, but not both. And so when I get there, the doctor comes out, and he said, I want you to see something. And he took me back in, and he showed me what was living inside of my dad's body. And he showed me the most recent scan, which showed a tumor over his pancreas. They didn't even know where his pancreas was anymore. That was over, he gave it to me in millimeters. But then he said, in essence, it's the size of a dinner plate. He said, but there's more. He's got spots on his lungs, and whatever this is, it has wrapped itself around his heart. So his prognosis is not good, just from a viewpoint of what we can see. I took it well. My dad's mother had died of cancer, and many of his uncles had died of cancer. And it did run in his family. And he always said that's how he'd die. And he was right. But that day and the few days that followed, we knew he was very sick. He'd gotten sick suddenly. He'd been perfectly healthy, earlier in the year. He had had a physical. He had had blood work. Everything looked wonderful. And he was happy and healthy. But that little rascal snuck in there and took his life. It just took a little piece at a time over those next few days. Within a week, he was in a coma. His life was just unraveling. It was falling apart. But he was so amazing through the whole thing. No matter how hard it was for him, he tried to put on a good front for us and tried to be tough. Now, he shielded my mother because my mother didn't deal with things as well as I did. And I was a daddy's girl, in case you haven't figured that out. I was a daddy's girl. So I'm over there daily helping take care of him. And I have people from my mom and dad's church. There was a lady, a sweet lady, that kept my daughter for nothing for the 3 weeks that my dad lived. And people were amazing. People from our church came. There were people that came that he worked with for years. And he was so grateful for everybody to come. And even though he didn't feel good, he tried to put on a good front. And even though inside his life was being choked out by tumors, he put on a good face for us. And I remember he'd gotten upset with me when I moved out on my own. And we really had not been as close as we had been. And I remember just realizing that, I needed to bring that up and I needed to talk about it. And I said, Dad, I want you to know I didn't move out to hurt you. I moved out because I was growing as a person, and I was I was capable of being independent and taking care of myself. And I needed to know that I could always take care of myself. I needed to know that I didn't always need a protector, someone to protect me and to make sure I was okay. And I said I wasn't doing it to hurt you in any way. And he looked at me and he smiled. He says, yeah, I figured it out. He thought I was, in his words, I was moving out to shack up. But that was, the way he thought, and that's okay. That wasn't the case. I moved out. I paid my own way. I struggled. I even, at that point, when I first moved out, I was working 3 jobs so that I could pay tuition and go to college, and I could pay my rent and my insurance for my car and gas. So I had very little money for anything else. And I tell my kids, if you're out on your own, you got to make sure you got gas in your car, you got lights on, you got your heat running. If you got to eat milk and bread or eggs, get milk, eggs, and bread, and you can live on that. Get you some peanut butter. And I know that from experience, but it was kind of a relief to be able to tell my dad that, even though things were unraveling for him. I didn't want him to die, and I feel like I should have said something that I didn't. So I'm not telling you this to be sad. I'm telling you this because if you have fractured relationships, you need to fix them. You need to agree to disagree and know that your family is your family till the end. Don't let it go until the end and then wish you had done something differently. Just a little thing I learned. It wasn't long after we brought him home that he just fell into a coma, and the hospice nurse would come and she said, he's not doing well, you might want to call the family in. And he hadn't talked for several days. And this is probably, it was a bad day, because she came in on a Saturday morning and she said, I don't think he's going to make it through the night. His heart rate's down. His vitals are just really not good. So we called his sisters, and the family all came. And our little neighbor that lived up the street, who was an excellent cook, she rang the doorbell. And at that point, he sat up in the bed, straight up in the bed, and he was looking around at everybody in the room. And we had formed a circle in the room, because it wasn't a big room, but we had all surrounded him, just, wanting to be there when he drew that last breath. And just send him on his way to his next life. Well, my mom went to the door, and she had our neighbor to come in, and she said, oh, she brought one of her really good chocolate cakes. And I went in there and I told my dad, I said, hey, Velma's here. She brought you some chocolate cake. Not expecting a response. He sat up in the bed and he looked at me and he looked around. He said, well, what are y'all all doing here? He said, it looks like a bunch of angels around here. And he said, I want a piece of cake. So I went and got it. But while I was getting his cake, he started looking at different ones and saying, well, I want you to do this and I want you to do that. My sister-in-law was there. and and he wanted her to sing his favorite song, and it was like a choir in there. It sounded like a choir of angels. I kid you not. It was the most wonderful thing ever. I mean, I was shocked. I said, okay, this woman told us he was going to die, and I'm expecting him to go just any time, but he sure don't look like somebody's dying to me. And he sat and waited for a little bit. His sister, who's a minister's wife, was reading scripture to him, which was what he did when he was home. He would sit in the recliner and he would read until he was just exhausted. He would read his Bible. And she was reading scripture to him. We were singing songs that he loved. It was just really unusual and very moving. And I thought about it, and at the time, I mean, it seemed pretty neat that he had woke up to talk to everybody and tell them goodbye. And that was the last time that we had any interaction with him at all that he was aware of. Shortly after that, he went back to sleep and he never woke up or spoke again. And I thought, when you look at things in the back of your mind, sometimes you don't see what's working and what's happening. You don't know that what you're experiencing is something really special and something that you need to remember. And so that is what inspired me. Even though he was in pain, even though he, was not well at all and was dying a little bit more every day, he kept living up until the very end. And finally, he broke free of that wet bag. So this wet bag piece of art represents my dad being released from his body that held him captive for 3 weeks from the day we knew he had cancer. And I do not have any regrets. I feel blessed to have had that time with my father. I had very, very good skills at taking care of people because I actually had worked with some severe and profoundly retarded children with physical limitations. So I knew how to take care of someone who was not well and was unable to get out of bed. And because of that experience, I was able to be there, and I was able to take care of him and let him have some dignity in the end, and not have my mom have to look back and watch every little aspect of it. So later in that day, the hospital nurse came and she just shook her head. She said, "You hadn't called, and I just knew he'd be dead by now." And I said, "No," and I told her what happened, and she looked at me. She says, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Well, I guess that was a God moment." I said, "Do you think?" It was a God moment. It was, and it was the most beautiful thing I had ever witnessed in my life. It was just something very, very special that I will never forget. And my dad died July the 2nd, 1992. And on that day, he left this world, and he broke out of that old bag that was holding him in that body. And he was free to go on to his next life and to be pain-free and to go see those that had gone on before him. And I feel blessed to be able to know, that there is a place that people go. There is a place where there's rest. There is a place where no matter what life throws at you, there's a place that you can find peace, and there's a place that you can find comfort. And I had never been with anybody when they died, and I just know that when I went to the hospital to take my daddy home, the doctor told me that, they had talked about it and there was really nothing they could do to make him, but to make him comfortable. They couldn't prolong his life. So my dad had decided that, we would manage his pain, and that was that. And that doctor looked at me and he said, well, I know that, your family has been praying over your daddy. And he says, I will continue to pray for him as well. But for now, I'm going to turn him over to the great physician. And my daddy said, God's will be done. And I'll be just fine. And for somebody that didn't like doctors, he took it very well. It was almost as though once he knew, he was like, well, I'm going to my next life. And it's okay. And I guess, to have somebody that's an example, for you like that, you learn not to fear death. I've been through a crisis in my life, and, I could have easily died, but it wasn't my time to go. God wasn't through with me yet. So there you have it. We can break out of our barriers. We can break through, obstacles, and we can lean on people that can help us find a place of peace. Now, I think that's all I'm going to do to that. I'm going to let that one dry. This one is going to go on the left side, and it's going to represent, the life as it was unraveling, and the pieces of the puzzle that had to be put together beforehand. And I'm going to get that one out of the way. And this one, I've gone around in circles. And I wish I had changed my thread and put black, because it would have shown up better. But I have stitched it in circles. And this is to represent my dad's life, the circle of his life. Because from the day that we're born, we know that if we live, we will die. Everything that lives someday will die. And how comfortable you feel with that, I'm not knocking what anyone believes. I'm just sharing my experiences. But I will tell you, watching my dad lean on his knowledge of the Bible gave him such peace and comfort during the time that he was, between heaven and earth, that I, in myself, find peace as well. When I knew I was going in to have brain surgery for a brain aneurysm, there was a chance I wouldn't make it. And I remember sitting with my children. Their dad had stepped out, and they crawled up on the bed with me, and they looked terrified. And I told them both, I said, look, God brought me into this world. He allowed me to be here, and He will take me out of this world. And everything that happens in between is going to happen. And I said, I can assure you, just as my father assured me, that no matter what happens, it is well with my soul. And that is what my dad, that was his favorite song. He loved that more than anything. And so for me, I told my children, they were still in high school. They were still in school. One was in middle school and one was in high school. I told them, I said, you know what you've been taught. You know what you've learned at church. If I am not here, I'm in heaven. And I will always be in your heart. So the circle of life is a precious thing. And this piece of art is going to honor that. Now, I did not grab my gold paint before I sat down, but I just feel like this needs to be like illuminated so that when you open it, you see, something beyond this world. So I'm going to grab those really quick. You know I don't move quick. Okay, I got silver. Let's get there metallic. Oh yeah, there we go. Do I want? Yeah, silver and gold. Okay, we got this. All right, I've got my silver and my gold paint here. And I'm going to put my scissors up because they don't need no paint. I should have said any. I think this brush will do. Sorry, I've got so emotional. Like I said, I was a daddy's girl, and my daddy was everything. And I still, to this day, if I smell diesel, my heart just skips a beat almost. It's like, it makes me happy, but it makes me sad at the same time. So, oh, let's rethink that. It needs to be on the outside. And I used a grocery bag, so I want to cover that up too. So I might suggest it at first. Might need a couple of coats. But on the lighter side, today is Sunday, and I'm glad that I can do this for you. And it was definitely thought-provoking. It provoked some emotions that I have not visited in a while. So, well done. I think that I was a wee bit intimidated at first, but I had told Michelle, I said, "Oh, we'll do the collage. It'll be easy." And I was not going to let her down. I was going to find my inspiration somewhere, and it just come to me. Sometimes it's meant for you to tell your story, so it'll help somebody else. If you have never been with anybody when they die, it's the greatest honor ever. Trust me, I know. I would go sit with a stranger if I knew they were dying, because there's nothing like giving that comfort to someone when they're coming to the end of their life, not to be alone. It's definitely an honor. And as it turned out, that was Saturday. My dad actually lived till Thursday. And we knew Wednesday night, we knew there's something they call the death rattles, when the body starts shutting down. It's just one of those sounds people make. Usually it comes when, they've been in a state of deterioration for a little while, but it doesn't generally last a long time. And that happened on Wednesday night. The family all came. We pretty much stayed through the night, and took shifts. And it was probably the first time that we had been all together in the house sleeping in a long time, but We were right there with him. The only one that was not there when he drew his last breath was my baby brother, and he had just started a new job. But he wasn't very far off, and they certainly let him leave, to come home. But after that, it was just like, okay, these are the things that we need to do, and I just stepped outside of that caregiver mode and went into the mode of who to call, what to tell them, and I come home and I slept and had peace while I was sleeping for the first time since his illness was diagnosed. So, and I don't think I wanted the silver there. But you did move your paper, silly girl. Getting a wipe so I can clean up my mess here. No! Okay. I don't think it's going to be a deal killer. Maybe it was meant to put a little color there. I don't know. I'll probably come back over it with some gold, because this is annihilating the silver. But it is covering up the writing, so we're getting there. And it's all right. Because there's one thing I've learned. I do not consider myself to be an artist. I'm actually more of a storyteller. My true profession is I went to school to be a preschool teacher and to teach preschool children. But they made me very, very sick because I have autoimmune disorders that were not diagnosed at that time. It took many years before I knew why I stayed sick all the time. So, anyway, I enjoy art. I enjoy creating, and I appreciate people that challenge me to reach deep and think hard and work towards trying to do things differently or better. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh yeah, I think this is saying I need some color, because my dad was a character. I remember one Sunday, I've never been able to sit real still, but one Sunday especially, I had sat with a young lady. We were little girls, but I had sat with a little girl up in the balcony of church, and she was real chatty. So every time my dad looked up to check on me, there was some chatting going on. Because if she talked to me, I was certainly going to talk back, whether I should be talking in church or not. And I wasn't that far from... The pulpit was... let's see, I was in the second section. And I felt what I thought was the hand of God at one moment. I thought, Lord, I'm in trouble. I felt a tap on my shoulder, and it was my daddy. Oh no, I am in trouble. I am in big, big trouble. So, that being said, my dad takes me out to the front porch of the church, which is this huge, like 15 steps, leading up to the entrance of the church. I mean, it was grand and glorious. It was a big church for back then. They had big plans for it. So, my daddy pulls his belt. He whipped that belt out. I mean, I heard it. It sounded like a zip coming out of his pants. He took that belt off his pants, and he's holding his pants up with one hand and hit me with the belt with the other. He striped my legs up good. But I deserved it. I really knew better than to be talking in church. So that lesson was learned. I never had to learn that lesson again. But my daddy brought me in and he sat me down beside this little old lady. And she tried to give me a mint and he looked at her with a side eye like, no. We get in the car to go home and he's looking at me and I'm looking at him. And nobody knows yet what's happened because my mom was up in the choir. And we got home and he told me, he said, now after we eat lunch, you're going to help your mama. You're going to stay in there until all the dishes are done. Well, nobody liked to do that, but I had to do it. It was my day. He gave the older kids the day off. They didn't have to do anything. So that was my lesson learned for life. You know, I absolutely do not talk in church. It is unacceptable. So, okay, so I've got that. I think that kind of is going to sit well. I did put a little bit of the gold on there. It's not perfect, and I really didn't care whether it was or not. After I got a little bit on there, it just seemed like that's what I was supposed to do. All right. Now let's get this magazine up here. And I think I'll be able to put this one on a little bit quicker than I will the other. Now I got to decide what kind of glue I want to use. I really think I need to use something quite sticky. That means we're going to use the Eileen's tacky glue. That is, if we can get it open. Alright, let me get a cloth on it. Maybe that'll help. Come on, hands. I know you can do it. I know you can. I feel like Thomas, the little engine that could. No, that wasn't Thomas, the little engine that could. I bet I read that story 100 times. Okay, we're going to go with plan B, as in, yep, it's going to be plan B. Let me get it, Elmer. I don't usually like to use Elmer's glue except for in glue mixture, but I think this is going to need it because, you know, a paper bag's got some weight to it. So I am going to flip this over and I'm going to whiz out Elmer's glue. And I may not get it all the way to the edge because I know it'll roll out and I will not be happy. So, and Elmer's does not, I mean, it's a good glue, but it just does not dry fast. So, here we have it. Called myself measuring my pages, but I ended up cutting them a little short because I forgot to take the fold out of the bag. This was just a grocery bag. Rub-a-dub-dub. Now let's see if this is dry enough. Yeah, I think it is. It's gonna be fun. Aren't you glad we're gonna have some fun? I hope I didn't make you feel really sad. My story wasn't meant to make you feel sad. It's just that sometimes if you're going to do art that provokes an emotion, it's okay to talk about it. At least I feel that way. If you think I overshared, tell me. Inspiration comes from different things. Most of the time I'm inspired by things outside. But when this came to me, I couldn't forget it. As soon as I thought about it, I said, that is it. That is exactly what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to actually do some of this on fabric so that I can use my seam ripper. Yay, my word came. I think I'm going to do one with fabric so I can use the seam ripper and do that while I'm in my recovery mode. And I think I'm going to make it to where it can be framed because I don't have, I do have, our guest bathroom downstairs has art in it. And it's running out of places to put stuff. And I know that's kind of maybe silly to put art in your bathroom, but coming into that bathroom on that hallway, I have art from different people. I have a thistle that we brought back from Scotland that was watercolored, and it's there. I've got an owl from Diana that I won, and I have a picture that I need to get. I've gotten it framed that I need to hang up that Eddie sent me. Eddie sent me a beautiful beach scene that he had watercolored, and I think it's going to go in the bathroom up here in the craft room, and I think the stitch piece is going to go too. Alright, now I'm going to have to decide before I lay this little rascal down which way I want it to go. So let's kind of this is what we want right here. Yes. And I made a comment Friday. If you're using a magazine or a book that is bound already, even like your altered books, do not go all the way to the edge with the glue, because if you do, that center binding starts getting very hard and it gets difficult. The further you go into the book, the harder it gets to make that work for you. Okay, so gotta figure out how I want to do this. I don't really want to cover any of it up. There we go. I think I'm going to put this part here, and I actually made a tab on the. I left it to where there's a tab. It doesn't really have to lift up, but that's what we got here. And then there's another piece somewhere. Did I lose it? Did I drop it? Inquiry minds need to know. There's the other one. I'm gonna go ahead and glue this down. I thought I wanted it to be a flip up, but I don't. I don't think I want it to flip. I just wanted to make sure I had a way to connect it. This was just a grocery bag. I get grocery bags because I can put my recycles in them and carry them out to the bin. I can tell that my glue underneath is still a little damp. Maybe I should have waited on it. All right, let's see what's on the other side here. Oh, yes, I can do that. Okay. There's enough room to put this underneath. And then fold it over. Uh-oh. Glue! No glue! No moss, no moss. Okay, glue and gel pen don't go together. Y'all probably knew that, didn't you? Oh well, I think it's okay. So here you have it, the Maker's Creative Collage Prompt, November of 2024, Breaking Boundaries. So if you have not tried this particular prompt, I hope this will give you some inspiration and some thoughts. I mean, if you decide you want to do something like this, hey, go for it. You know, you could use pictures of somebody behind it if you wanted to. I did find this was something I had kept off of a magazine we had gotten when we went to Wilmington. And I thought, well, that might be kind of cute on there. It's not my dad, but, you know, it could represent any of us breaking out of a situation that we don't want to be in. You know, you just got to keep that fight, you know, until the fight is over. And if I want to, I can, once this dries well, I can close this up. It's a little bit too wet right now to try that, so I'm not going to do it. But this is my finished product, and I'm pleased with it. Thank you for challenging me to do something different and to step out of my comfort zone and think through, you know, how to create art. I could get the emotion, you know, I could think through, you know, what boundaries you might have to come through. And for me, it would be my health, you know, breaking free of things that health wise, you know, are difficult sometimes, but that's not what inspired me. So here you have it. I want to thank you. I've gone longer today than I usually would. I do thank you in advance for watching. If you would give it a thumbs up, I sure would appreciate it. And if you like what I'm doing, you know, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with your friends, because my channel's growing. It's small, but you know, I am trying to give people inspiration and show them that there's hope. in situations that you think that there's no answer for it. Sometimes art is that outlet. So until next time, be well, my friends. Bye bye.